Okay, welcome back from the break. What I'd like to do now is begin to elicit some beliefs. So we can begin as a group to hear different beliefs, to make sure that they're beliefs, whether they're cause-effects beliefs, whether they're based on values, whether they're complex equivalences. Really begin to fine-tune your ears to beliefs so that when you go out to work on these, you'll already have some practice in knowing what you're working with. So I'm going to help you with that right now. So I'd like to start hearing from you some beliefs you've already thought of that you might like to change over the next 2 days. Anyone? Anyone? Yes,
Well,
Jim.
I'm thinking of a client that I've worked with, and we're doing some things about healing. It was going really well, and then this belief popped up as that's all great, but you don't deserve to have that.
Okay. So a deserving level belief,
Right.
which is about worthless, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's an identity level belief. Okay. I'm not creative enough. I could be more creative. So what are you hearing there?
Identity, I am.
You're hearing an I am, okay? And then she restated it, didn't she? How did she restate it?
I could be more creative. Behavior.
Possibility.
What's could? Right? It's at the capability level. So at first she stated at the identity level, right? Say it again. I'm not creative enough. That's strong. And then say the other one.
I could be more creative. That's the kind of desire.
So they're different
Yes.
in your physiology. You could feel the difference between the two. One feels more powerful than the other. You can't see the nonverbals in the video, but how she's expressing herself is the first one, I'm not creative enough, is like this sort of more solid, absolute kind of experience, right? So her body's kind of more doing this. And then she says, I could be more creative. And you see her physiology shift. And she goes, does that gesture. So the second one begins to create action. So you can already see that it probably is context specific. And that'll help you to deal with the belief, to begin to change it, right? I'm not creative enough. You might want to know where, right? Where and when.
So some well-formedness.
So you're going to begin to find where that's true, because I imagine, Georgie, that you're already creative in many places in your life. What's that?
In some.
Some.
It doesn't believe you. Not many, but in some.
But you could be more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
love to.
And you'd love to. Okay. All right. Other examples.
I cannot lose weight easily.
I cannot lose weight easily. This is a big one, isn't it? In a lot of cultures.
Yes.
A lot of people have difficulty with weight loss. I cannot lose weight easily. So what level is that at?
Capability.
Capability. So it's about possibility, right? It's about limiting possibility. I cannot lose weight easily. So there was a qualifier in there, wasn't there? I can lose weight with difficulty, but I can't lose weight easily. Okay? So there's some value being expressed in there, right? That what would be valuable is to be able to lose weight easily versus just being able to lose weight. So if the statement was, I cannot lose weight, that's different than lose weight easily, right? So in belief work, you really need to pay attention to the language. You really need to listen for how it's being stated. and help explore with them the statement that they really want to change.
Because something like that could go to a core belief that's beyond, it could be at the identity level.
Could be.
That's why I said easily.
Mm-hmm. There could be a belief that holds that one in place.
Yeah.
You know? Like, does it have to be easy? Right? Losing weight has to be easy. There could be another belief like that that holds that one in place. So then the person begins to, because those beliefs can be colluding like that, you can lose the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish in the first place, which is to lose weight. Because the beliefs are holding it in such a way that it's not possible. Okay. Others?
I'm too complacent.
I'm too complacent. There's many beliefs that come in the form of I'm too ... So where do those go? Identity level. So what do you want to do right away to begin to create doubt?
Is it always complacent in every situation?
Great. So you begin to go for the context.
Counterexample.
So you said, say it again.
Are you always complacent in every situation?
Are you always complacent in every situation? So that's challenging that belief, right? Looking for a counterexample so that you can specify the context. So Ron will probably end up saying, no, not everywhere. I'm too complacent here, right, in these specific contexts. So now you've taken it out of an identity level belief, which is much more challenging to change, right, than a belief about capability, possibility, developing skills, and so on. In this particular case, complacency has to do with what? Motivation, right? Motivation is what we're dealing with there. So you can explore more about his motivation strategies, and this might end up actually being a strategy piece of work rather than a belief piece of work. So that's why you want to explore these, to see if the belief really holds true.
And then
Yeah.
you shift the belief from identity conversationally, and it's still very much an identity belief. I mean, you might shift it conversationally. What I'm suggesting, it may still remain at the identity level in a deep sense. Then all the work that you do at capability level may not shift it at all.
That's a possibility. So Anne's saying that there's a possibility that working with the capability, you may not actually get to the core belief and change it at the identity level, which is true. And your evidence procedure, your convincer strategy, absolutely. So now you're really starting to get into what mastery of this is all about, right? Mastery is looking at those evidence procedures, what it takes to convince somebody that something's true. And at what level does a change need to occur in order for it to be realized? Because sometimes just changing a core level, like I'm worthy, to I'm not worthy to I am worthy, how do you prove something like that? How do you just change it with a belief? Well, you are. You are worthy. We're all worthy, right? Of what? When? How? You know, there's so many questions. So sometimes working with the core belief is actually more challenging to try and get the evidence procedure and the convincer to work than changing it to a capability and using it that way back up the ladder to disprove the core belief. So that's how you tie those together. If you're aware that the core belief is there, you work with the other one. And you go, well, if we prove that this is not true, then doesn't that mean this isn't true either? Right? And so if you can get them to agree to that kind of change at a congruent level, at that core level, then you're going to begin to change that core belief that way.
I'm recognizing I'm holding some doubt about it, because I guess I'm thinking of the different it's a strategies for different people, and highly kinesthetic people might well need to do something in order to shift it and to actually.
Absolutely.
It's been my experience that teaching people a skill, like you said before, can shift the belief, moving them from can't draw, can now draw, can't sing, can now sing, loosens beliefs and can loosen them in general.
Absolutely.
So my doubt is coming up about the conversational style, because that's another level of representation is at the language level. So that's interesting.
So that's why there are many forms of changing belief. That just conversational can be impactful. However, sometimes you need to have somebody having a kinesthetic experience to actually feel the belief change in their body and to have it change at an unconscious level versus just an awareness that the belief has changed consciously. Which is why, as a practitioner, you're really needing to pay attention to the person's physiological cues, really getting whether the belief is changing or not, right? Watching for objections, watching for incongruencies, watching for examples where this new belief really isn't changing or hasn't changed. And you also must be aware that changing a belief isn't always just a one-session deal. You know, that you sit down and do one of these techniques and the belief changes, and their whole life is different after that. Because sometimes, as you said, Anne, the convincer strategy takes time, takes new data. Like I was working with a guy last week who had some beliefs about his worthiness and things like that. And so we did some real core level belief changes, but then we tied them into some of his emotional reactions to certain experiences, like going to a conference and having to actually sell something to other people when he's an engineer. And he's much more used to being in the back room working on the engineering stuff, and now he's being asked by his company to now do some sales, to actually talk to some people about it, and he's terrified. And so the belief of his worthiness really comes up in that context. So we work with the belief and the worthiness, and then we want to have a proving ground later. Have him go to that conference and have an experience where something shifts and now the belief really begins to change. So yeah, sometimes a belief is going to change over time. Which is why it's important to set that up over time, to attach it to something that they're going to be doing in the future, right? So that they can actually begin to see the belief in action. This is where sometimes where NLP So anyway, this is sometimes where NLP is unnoticed, goes unnoticed by the client or the person receiving the work, is that you change a belief, the person's belief changes, they start behaving differently in the world, but they don't notice it. Because as we said before, our presuppositions and our beliefs are often unconscious to us, and we act as a result of them. And so we have a new belief. Now our body reorganizes, our body and mind reorganizes to that new belief at an unconscious level, and we start behaving and acting according to that new belief, and we become unaware, or we are unaware, of the previous belief, because we no longer hold it anymore. Does that make sense? It also enables people to say, I did it myself.
It's very enabling in itself.
It's very enabling, absolutely. So if you're a practitioner, if you're a therapist, if you're somebody who coaches people, who works in that kind of service, that's where there's sort of a conundrum sometimes. You know, do I want them to recognize that the work that I'm doing is having the effect, or do I want them to realize that they're doing it on their own, which is more enabling and more empowering? It's difficult, right? Because you want them to come back, right? And do more work. Not always, but I mean, yeah, at least spread the word, right? Which they can't do if they think they did it. Right? You never know.
If they can't do it, they wouldn't have come.
Depends which belief you're holding.
It's the tricky part of it. All right, more beliefs. Excellent. Metaphoric forms of belief. Like the old dog, new tricks one. Yeah. So a metaphoric expression of a belief. Life is dog eat dog. Business is war. Life is a rat race. Yep. Exactly. So, yeah, so if you have beliefs that, again, are in that form, again, you want to look contextually. Does this metaphor that I have work for me in most of my life, or are there places where it's limiting? And I either want to change my metaphor or I want to change the belief, or both. Okay? Other beliefs. I'd like to expand.
In business.
Okay, business context. I wasn't sure whether that meant. So in business, I'd like to expand my business, but business, but it's so difficult. So what's the belief?
Expansion is difficult.
Expansion is difficult. Complex equivalence, right? So as long as that's true, and I don't want difficulty, my motivation pattern says I don't want difficulty, then that belief creates limitation. Right? Might be useful to change that belief. What else?
I would like to say something. I'm trying to choose a belief,
Uh-huh.
and every time I choose a belief, I've got in my mind a lot of examples that end up the belief.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I just knew it. I just need a new belief.
So say again. You
Every
think
time
of the examples.
I'm trying to think about a belief.
Think of a belief. Uh-huh.
Yeah, to say to you
Mhm.
my belief.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I choose a belief,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of examples that comes in my mind
Mm-hmm.
that put in doubt the belief that.
That creates doubt around it?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So maybe I'm.
Let's hear an example.
I get angry too much.
I get angry too much. Okay. And then you start thinking,
Yeah, that it happens often that I'm never hungry.
okay.
Hungry.
Okay. So
maybe
so
too
again, the
much.
belief operates in a specific context then.
Yeah.
So when do you believe that about yourself?
Um,
Every time you get angry?
no.
No?
No.
So sometimes when you get angry, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there times when you do get angry that you believe that you get angry too much?
Yeah.
So what are those times?
When the situation is really silly.
Okay.
You don't need to get angry.
Okay. And so this is an evaluative one, isn't it? Based on criteria. So she decides when her anger is okay, when she doesn't need to be angry, or when the anger is too much. Okay? So you can use a belief change around that specific context. Okay? So that's a possibility, which could open up possibilities for different behaviors and reactions. So, yeah. So just because you find counterexamples doesn't mean that you still don't hold it as a belief.
Oh, okay.
Right? You just hold it as a belief in a particular way. And so that's why it's important to find the way in which you hold the belief and go, do I want to hold the belief in that way? Because you may find I want it to operate. I like this belief in this way because it enables me to stop being so angry, or, right? So sometimes the belief can create an away from that's actually productive in the direction that I want to go. Right? So that might be an examination you want to make around that belief. So say it again.
You want me to say
Same one. Same one.
Okay. I get angry too much.
I get angry too much.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you've got it more in a specific context, right? In certain situations where it's silly or doesn't need to. Okay? And so believing that you get angry too much in those contexts, what does that lead to? Does the belief prevent you from getting angry anymore in those contexts? You don't know? Or do you still get angry in those contexts and then just believe that you get angry too much?
I think I need maybe to change the behavior.
Change the behavior.
Yeah, I would like more choices about my behavior.
Great. So the belief can lead to that, right? That belief may be useful in guiding Alessandra, in guiding her to something that will help her to change the behavior. So that's where in this situation, the belief might be useful. Might be create the motivation to make the change. So you don't want to hear a belief and immediately assume that it's limiting, right? Which is easy for us to do based on how it's stated. Right, because we're fixers, right? That's what we want to do. We want to help people resolve stuff. But let's not resolve something that's actually creating motivation to make another change that would be valuable for the person. So let's examine the belief a little bit. Let's take a little time with them to really examine it and then decide if we're going to change it or not. A few more examples or enough on that?
I'm thinking, I'm wondering how to frame it. I'm doing this search myself. What comes to mind for me is that something that runs for me quite a bit is I'm too other-oriented.
I'm too other-oriented.
Another way would be too reactive.
Too reactive.
Responsive. Too secondary position.
Is that a belief? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I'm too reactive or too, what was the other word you used?
Other-oriented.
Other-oriented.
Not responsive.
Not responsive.
Not responsive enough out of me.
Okay. So does that belief serve you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
What does it do?
It's wonderful for understanding others. It's wonderful for going into second position. It's terrific for that. And it can be challenging.
To be too much those things is,
Or too much. Well, it gives you lots of information. To be too much means, for me, my complex ignorance is I can lose a sense of myself.
okay. So to be too something, you lose a sense of yourself. I'm also hearing, if I'm too this, then I don't get enough of that. Right? So I'm out of balance. When I'm doing this and it's serving my client or whoever I'm working with, then it's not too much, right? It's just the right amount. But in some cases it becomes too much, which then I don't get enough of this other part of.
And as you're saying that, it makes me think it's at a skill level. It's like how to. That's what's coming up for me.
Okay, so it's a capability question.
But I've generalized it as a belief that runs.
How do I utilize my second position, my going to other, but not too much? How do I utilize it in a way that I can also be responsive?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, so there may not be a belief there to change, unless you believe that you're not capable of doing that, or something to that effect. Or like, I'm just a other-oriented person, for example, right? I don't know how to do self very well. Could be a belief. So you might examine, are there beliefs that hold that process in place, that don't allow you to develop that skill, that new skill of being able to do both of them in balance, responsive and reactive. Yeah. Is this helpful, or am I confusing things by doing these little pieces to help? Because this is part of belief change. You know, it's not just, what's your belief? All right, let's change it. Right? We need to make sure that the ecology piece is in there, that we're exploring what's going on, how it works, all the previous NLP skills that you developed, right? Asking questions, exploring how something happens, how it fits for that person in that context. And then finding if there's some limiting piece in there that we could work with, that we could explore, that we could help to loosen, that might help something else happen. Okay? Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and do the submodality belief change pattern. On break, anybody who has one that they're ready to work with, a belief that they think they want to change, please come up and let's explore it a little bit so we can see if it's right for the pattern. Okay?